The knife went in clean at the fancy restaurant downtown, right between my ribs and straight into what was left of my pride. My wife Dana smiled sweetly at her boss Victor as she gestured toward me with her wine glass. "This is Grant, my almost ex-husband," she said, her voice carrying that particular tone she reserved for discussing broken appliances. "We still live together, but it doesn't mean anything anymore." Victor Brann extended his manicured hand across the white tablecloth, his Rolex catching the candlelight. "Good to know," he said, his grip lingering a moment too long. "Then Dana and I can speak freely about our business arrangements." I sat there in my off-the-rack suit, watching my wife of 22 years introduce me like I was some embarrassing roommate she'd picked up at a bus station. The irony wasn't lost on me. Here I was, Grant Mercer, commercial real estate broker who'd spent 2 decades closing million-dollar deals, being dismissed like yesterday's newspaper. "Well," I said, forcing a smile that felt like swallowing glass, "if this isn't a knife in the ribs, it's at least a salad fork." Dana's laugh was brittle. Grant's always had such a unique sense of humor. Victor leaned back in his chair, studying me with the kind of look a cat gives a mouse before deciding whether it's worth the effort. Something flickered in his eyes. Recognition, maybe. Then he smiled, and a cold wave of realization hit me. "You know, Grant," he said, swirling his wine. "You look familiar. Didn't we have some business dealings a few years back? That strip mall project on the east side?" The memory hit me like a sledgehammer. Victor Brann. 3 years ago, he'd swooped in at the last minute and stolen a deal I'd been working on for 6 months. Cost me a $50,000 commission and nearly tanked my business. I'd never forgotten that smug face. "Ancient history," I managed. "Is it?" Victor's smile widened. "You always were a little slow on the uptake, Grant. Some things never change." Dana was looking between us, confused. "You two know each other?" "Oh, we go way back," Victor said. "Your husband here learned some valuable lessons about business from me. Didn't you, Grant?" I gripped my water glass so hard I thought it might shatter. Around us, the restaurant hummed with quiet conversation and clinking silverware, but all I could hear was the sound of my world cracking apart. My wife wasn't just cheating on me. She was cheating on me with the one man who'd already destroyed me once before. "Excuse me," I said, standing abruptly. "I need some air." I walked out of that restaurant feeling like I'd been skinned alive. The October wind cut through my jacket as I stood on the sidewalk, watching through the window as Dana and Victor leaned closer together, their heads nearly touching as they whispered and laughed. That's when I noticed Victor's car, a silver BMW M5, parked right there at the curb, like a monument to his arrogance. The same car he'd probably driven to steal my deal 3 years ago. The same car he'd driven to steal my wife. I looked around. The street was empty except for a homeless guy half a block down, too busy with his bottle to notice anything else. The restaurant's windows faced the other direction. No security cameras that I could see. I pulled out my keys. The metal scraped against the BMW's paint with a sound like fingernails on a chalkboard. I carved a nice long line from the front bumper to the back, then another one on the other side for good measure. Under his windshield wiper, I left a note on the back of a business card. "Real men don't need to steal wives." "Hey, what are you doing?" I spun around. A security guard from the building next door was walking toward me, hand on his radio. My heart hammered against my ribs, but I forced myself to stay calm. "Just leaving a note for my friend," I said, holding up the business card. "Victor asked me to remind him about our meeting tomorrow." The guard squinted at me suspiciously. "That your car?" "Victor's. We're business partners." I smiled and patted the BMW's hood. "Beautiful car, isn't it? He's always so careful with it." The guard grunted and walked away, but I caught him looking back over his shoulder. Time to go. I walked to my own car 3 blocks away, hands shaking as I started the engine. It wasn't until I was halfway home that I realized I'd probably been caught on some security camera I'd missed. But honestly, I didn't care. For the first time in months, I felt alive. The next morning, I woke up to the sound of Dana's heels clicking across our hardwood floors like gunshots. She was pacing in the kitchen, phone pressed to her ear, voice tight with barely controlled fury. "I don't care what the police say, Victor. Someone keyed your car, and I have a pretty good idea who." I padded downstairs in my bathrobe, poured myself coffee, and sat at the kitchen table like I didn't have a care in the world. Dana glared at me over her phone. "I'll call you back," she said, hanging up. "We need to talk." "Good morning to you too, sweetheart." "Don't." Her voice could have frozen Lake Erie. "Victor's car was vandalized last night, right after you stormed out of dinner." I took a sip of coffee. "That's terrible. Did he call the police?" "You know he did. And you know what? There's security footage from the building next door. They're reviewing it today." My stomach dropped, but I kept my face neutral. "Well, I hope they catch whoever did it. Vandalism is a serious crime." Dana slammed her hand on the counter. "Cut the act, Grant. I know it was you." "You know what I know?" I stood up, suddenly tired of playing games. "I know you've been screwing your boss for months. I know you've been planning to leave me, and I know you're too much of a coward to just file for divorce like an adult." Her face went white, then red. "How dare you?" "I found the emails, Dana. All of them. The hotel receipts, the late-night business meetings, the texts about how you can't wait to start your new life with Victor." I laughed, and it came out bitter as black coffee. "You left your laptop open, genius. Our shared computer that I pay for." She opened her mouth, closed it, opened it again like a fish gasping for air. Finally, "Those were private. On our shared computer? In our shared house? Paid for with our shared money?" I shook my head. "You want to know what's private? The conversation I'm going to have with my lawyer this morning." That's when our daughter Sophie walked in. At 22, she had Dana's sharp features and my stubborn streak, a dangerous combination. She looked between us, taking in the tension. "What's going on?" she asked. "Your father is having a midlife crisis," Dana said quickly. "He's making wild accusations and—" "Your mother is cheating on me with her boss," I said. "Has been for months." Sophie's eyes widened. She looked at Dana, waiting for a denial that never came. "Mom?" Dana's shoulders sagged. "It's complicated, Sophie." "No," I said. "It's really not. Your mother fell in love with someone else and decided to humiliate me instead of ending our marriage with dignity." Sophie stared at her mother for a long moment, then turned to me. "So you keyed his car?" "I never said I keyed anyone's car." "But you did, didn't you?" I met my daughter's eyes. "Sometimes, Sophie, when someone takes everything from you, you take something back." She nodded slowly. "Good." Dana gasped. "Sophie." "No, Mom. You don't get to play victim here. Dad worked his ass off for this family while you—" "What? Fell in love with some rich guy who could give you a better lifestyle?" "You don't understand." "I understand perfectly." Sophie grabbed her purse. "I'm going back to my apartment. Call me when you two figure out how to act like adults." She slammed the door behind her, leaving Dana and me alone in the wreckage of our kitchen. "This is all your fault," Dana whispered. "My fault? I'm not the one who—" My phone rang. Unknown number. "Grant Mercer." "Mr. Mercer, this is Detective Morrison with Cleveland PD. We need to speak with you about an incident last night involving a damaged vehicle." Dana was watching me, her eyes bright with vindictive satisfaction. "Of course, Detective. When would be convenient?" "How about now? We're outside." Through the window, I could see a police cruiser in our driveway. Dana smiled for the first time in days. "I'll be right out," I said. Detective Morrison was younger than I'd expected, maybe early 30s, with the kind of mustache that suggested he took himself very seriously. His partner, Detective Hayes, was older and looked bored. "Mr. Mercer, we're investigating the vandalism of a BMW belonging to Victor Brann. The incident occurred last night outside Chez Laurent restaurant." "Okay," I said. "How can I help?" "Mr. Brann says he was having dinner with you and your wife when the incident occurred." "That's right. Business dinner." Morrison flipped through his notepad. "He also says you left the dinner abruptly, appearing upset." "I had a headache. Rich food doesn't agree with me." Hayes spoke up. "Where did you go when you left?" "Home. Took some aspirin and went to bed." "Can anyone verify that?" I glanced toward the house where Dana was watching from the window. "My wife came home about an hour later. She can confirm I was here." Morrison nodded. "We'll need to speak with her. We also have security footage from a building near the scene. We're having it enhanced, but it shows someone matching your description near Mr. Brann's vehicle." My mouth went dry, but I kept my voice steady. "Lot of middle-aged white guys in suits downtown, Detective." "True enough." Morrison closed his notepad. "Mr. Mercer, did you damage Mr. Brann's vehicle?" The question hung in the air like smoke. I could lie, but if they had footage, the lie would just make things worse. I could tell the truth and probably face charges. Or, "Detective, can I ask you something?" "Sure. You ever been married?" Morrison looked confused. "Yeah." "Your wife ever cheat on you?" His expression shifted slightly. Hayes was suddenly paying attention. "Mr. Mercer, because if she did, and if the guy she was cheating with was the same guy who'd already screwed you over in business, well..." I shrugged. "I imagine you might have some strong feelings about that." Morrison and Hayes exchanged a look. "Are you saying your wife is having an affair with Mr. Brann?" Hayes asked. "I'm saying that if someone keyed Victor Brann's car, they probably had a damn good reason." Morrison sighed. "Mr. Mercer, I need a direct answer. Did you damage the vehicle?" I thought about Dana watching from the window, about Victor's smug face, about the deal he'd stolen from me 3 years ago and the wife he was stealing from me now. "Detective, that car represents everything that's wrong with people like Victor Brann. They take what they want, when they want it, and they never face consequences. If someone finally gave him a taste of his own medicine..." I met Morrison's eyes. "Well, maybe that someone did the world a favor. Is that a confession?" "That's a philosophical statement." Hayes chuckled despite himself. Morrison shot him a look. "Mr. Mercer, we're going to need you to come down to the station." "Am I under arrest?" "Not yet. But we need to review the footage with you present." I nodded. "Can I get dressed first?" "Make it quick." I went inside, where Dana was waiting by the door. "Are they arresting you?" "Not yet, but they want me to look at security footage." For the first time, she looked worried. "Grant, if you go to jail..." "You'll what? Miss me?" She didn't answer. I went upstairs and put on my best suit, the one I wore for important closings. If I was going down, I was going down looking like a professional. As I knotted my tie, I caught sight of myself in the mirror. 50 years old, graying at the temples, laugh lines that had turned into worry lines somewhere along the way. When had I become this person? When had I become someone whose wife could dismiss him at a business dinner like he was nothing? My phone buzzed. Text from an unknown number. Saw the news about Victor's car? Couldn't have happened to a nicer guy? Mike, Big Mike, my old boxing coach from back when I had time for the gym. We'd lost touch over the years, but apparently word traveled fast in Cleveland's business community. I texted back, "Don't know what you're talking about." "Sure you don't. Beer later, assuming you're not in jail." Despite everything, I smiled. "Rain check. Might be busy. Offer stands. Some fights are worth having." I pocketed the phone and headed downstairs. Dana was still by the window, but now she was on the phone again. "He's leaving with them now," she was saying. "I don't know how long..." "Yes, I know it's complicated. No, he doesn't suspect about the other thing." The other thing? I stopped at the bottom of the stairs, listening. "Megan, I can't talk about this now. He might hear. I know, but if this goes public, we're both screwed. Megan, Dana's best friend and co-worker. What could they both be screwed about? Detective Morrison knocked on the door. Mr. Mercer? Ready? I opened the door, my mind racing. Whatever Dana and Megan were hiding, it was something beyond the affair. Something that could hurt them both if it came to light. Ready, detective. As we drove toward the police station, I found myself thinking about Big Mike's text. Some fights are worth having. He was right, but he didn't know the half of it yet. The interrogation room at the Cleveland PD looked exactly like every cop show ever made. Gray walls, metal table, two-way mirror, and fluorescent lights that made everyone look like a corpse. Detective Morrison sat across from me while Hayes leaned against the wall, trying to look intimidating. Before we start, Morrison said, do you want a lawyer? Do I need one? That's up to you. I thought about it. A lawyer would tell me to shut up, which was probably smart advice. But lawyers cost money, and money was about to become a serious issue if Donna followed through with her plans. Let's see what you've got first. Morrison nodded to Hayes, who wheeled in an old TV on a cart. The security footage was grainy and black and white, but clear enough. There I was, walking up to Victor's BMW, looking around, then bending over the car for about 30 seconds before walking away. That's you, isn't it, Mr. Mercer? No point in denying it now. Yeah, that's me. And what are you doing? Leaving a note. Hayes snorted. With your car key? It was windy. I had to scratch it into the paint so it wouldn't blow away. Morrison almost smiled at that. Almost. Mr. Mercer, vandalism is a misdemeanor. First offense, you're looking at a fine, maybe some community service. But if you cooperate, help us understand the situation, maybe we can work something out. What kind of something? Tell us about your relationship with Mr. Brann. So I did. I told them about the strip mall deal 3 years ago, how Victor had swooped in at the last minute with inside information and stolen 6 months of my work. I told them about discovering the affair, about the business dinner, about being introduced as Dana's almost ex-husband. That's got to hurt, Hayes said. You have no idea. So, you decided to get revenge? I decided to leave him a message. By keying his car. By expressing my feelings in a way he'd understand. Morrison leaned back in his chair. Mr. Mercer, here's the thing. Victor Brann is pushing hard for charges. Says you're unstable, that you might escalate. But between you and me, Guy comes across like a real piece of work. He is. On the other hand, you did commit a crime. Can't just ignore that. I nodded. What are my options? Well, Mr. Brann's car needs about $800 in bodywork. You could pay restitution, maybe do some community service, and we could probably keep this out of court. And if I don't? Then we charge you, and it goes on your record. Might affect your real estate license. $800. It might as well have been $8,000, given my current financial situation. But losing my license would be worse. Can I think about it? Sure, but don't think too long. Mr. Brann wants an answer by tomorrow. They released me with a promise to be in touch. I called a cab and rode home in silence, watching Cleveland roll past the windows. Gray sky, gray buildings, gray people hurrying along gray sidewalks. Everything looked the color of my mood. Dana's car wasn't in the driveway when I got home. Probably at Victor's, planning their future together. I let myself into the empty house and poured a whiskey. The good stuff I'd been saving for special occasions seemed appropriate somehow. My phone rang. Sophie. Dad? Mom told me you got arrested. Not arrested, questioned. There's a difference. Are you okay? I've been better, kiddo. Dad, I'm sorry about all this. About Mom. About everything. Not your fault, Sophie. I know, but God, this is such a mess. And now there's other stuff. What other stuff? Silence on the line. Sophie? Dad, I probably shouldn't say anything, but Mom's friend Megan called me earlier. She was asking weird questions about you, about your business, about whether you ever talked about tax stuff at home. Tax stuff? Yeah, like whether you ever mentioned hiding income or writing off personal expenses as business costs. I told her you were the most honest guy I knew, but she kept pushing. What exactly did she say? She said there might be some irregularities in your business records, and that if Mom was going to divorce you, she needed to protect herself from any potential IRS problems. I set down my whiskey with a shaking hand. Sophie, listen to me very carefully. I want you to stay away from Megan, okay? Don't answer her calls, don't meet with her, don't tell her anything about me or my business. Dad, you're scaring me. Good, be scared, and be careful. After I hung up, I sat in my kitchen staring at nothing, pieces clicking into place. The other thing Dana had mentioned on the phone with Megan, the questions about my business records, the timing of it all. They weren't just planning to divorce me, they were planning to destroy me. I pulled out my laptop and started going through my business files, looking for anything that might be construed as irregular. I was meticulous about my records, had to be, in commercial real estate, but I knew that with enough creativity, any business could be made to look suspicious. That's when I found it. A series of invoices from a consulting company I'd never heard of, Brann Strategic Solutions. Payments totaling nearly $15,000 over the past year, all for market analysis and client development services. Victor's company. Somehow, he'd been billing my business for services I'd never requested or received. And if Dana had access to my business accounts, which she did as my wife, she could have authorized the payments. I was being set up, framed for tax fraud or embezzlement or God knows what else. When Dana filed for divorce, she'd claim I'd been hiding assets and conducting fraudulent business practices. I'd lose everything, my license, my business, maybe even my freedom. But they'd made one mistake. They'd underestimated me. I smiled for the first time all day and reached for my phone. It was time to call Big Mike. Big Mike's gym looked like it hadn't been updated since the Carter administration. Cracked leather-heavy bags, speed bags that had seen better decades, and the permanent smell of sweat and determination. It was exactly what I needed. You look like hell, Mike said, wrapping my hands. At 65, he was still built like a brick wall, with hands that had seen 1,000 fights and eyes that had seen everything else. Feel worse than I look? Tell me. So I did. Everything. The affair, the keyed car, the police interrogation, and now the discovery of the fraudulent invoices. Mike listened without interruption, occasionally grunting or nodding. They're trying to frame you, he said when I finished. That's what I figured. Question is, what are you going to do about it? I threw a combination at the heavy bag. Left jab, right cross, left hook. The impact felt good, like I was hitting something that deserved it. I'm going to fight back. Good, but smart, right? Not stupid. Smart, Mike smiled. Then let's talk strategy. We spent the next hour working out the details. Mike had connections throughout Cleveland's business community, former fighters who'd gone into construction, real estate, finance, you name it. Information was currency, and Mike was rich. First thing, he said, we need to know exactly what they're planning. Can't fight what you can't see coming. How do we find that out? Leave that to me. I know a guy who knows a guy who works in Victor's building. Cleaning crew sees everything, hears everything, remembers nothing officially. What about the invoices? We need copies of everything. Bank records, email authorizations, the works. You got a forensic accountant? I know one. Good, get him involved. If they're setting you up, there'll be a paper trail. There always is. I threw another combination, harder this time. The bag swayed on its chain. Mike, what if this gets ugly? Son, it's already ugly. Question is whether you're going to let them bury you or if you're going to dig yourself out and bury them instead. And if I choose option 2? Mike's smile was predatory. Then we're going to teach some people why it's a bad idea to mess with a Cleveland boy who's got nothing left to lose. I left the gym feeling better than I had in days. Not good exactly, but focused, angry, ready. My phone buzzed as I drove home. Text from Dana. Working late. Don't wait up. I laughed out loud. Working late? Right. Instead of going home, I drove to my office. The building was mostly empty, just a few lights and windows here and there. I used my keycard to get into the suite I shared with 3 other brokers and went straight to my desk. Time to do some investigating of my own. I started with the Brann Strategic Solutions invoices, tracing them back through my business accounts. Each payment had been authorized by email, supposedly from me, but I'd never sent any of them. The email address was mine, but the IP addresses were different. Someone else had been sending emails from my account. Next, I checked my client files. 3 deals from the past year had fallen through at the last minute, all of them going to other brokers. All of them now appeared to be managed by Victor's company. The pattern was clear. Victor and Dana had been systematically sabotaging my business while setting me up for fraud charges. The affair was just the cherry on top of a much more elaborate revenge plot. But why? What had I done to deserve this level of hatred? Then I remembered something. The strip mall deal Victor had stolen 3 years ago. It hadn't just cost me a commission. The original developer had gone bankrupt after Victor's company pulled some financial shenanigans, and a dozen small businesses had lost their leases. One of them had been owned by a family friend of Dana's. She'd blamed me for not fighting harder to keep the deal. Said I'd let Victor walk all over me, let him destroy innocent people's livelihoods. We'd had a huge fight about it, one of the worst in our marriage. I'd thought she'd gotten over it. Apparently not. This wasn't just about the affair. This was about revenge. Dana had been planning this for 3 years, waiting for the perfect opportunity to destroy me the same way she thought I'd let Victor destroy others. My phone rang. Unknown number. Grant Mercer. Mr. Mercer, this is Janet Walsh from the IRS Criminal Investigation Division. We need to schedule a meeting to discuss some irregularities in your business tax filings. What kind of irregularities? I'd prefer to discuss this in person. Are you available tomorrow morning? Yes. What time? 9 a.m., Federal Building downtown. Bring your accountant. She hung up. I sat in my empty office, staring at the phone, feeling the walls close in around me. They'd moved faster than I'd expected. The IRS was already involved, which meant this was serious. Criminal Investigation Division meant potential jail time. I called my accountant, got his voicemail, left a message. Then I called Mike. They accelerated the timeline, I told him. IRS called. Meeting tomorrow morning. Shit. Okay, change of plans. We move tonight. What do you mean? I mean, it's time to stop playing defense and start playing offense. You free right now? Yeah. Meet me at the gym. And Grant, bring everything you've got on Victor and Dana. Every email, every document, every scrap of paper. We're going to war. Big Mike was waiting for me at the gym with 2 other men I didn't recognize. One was tall and thin with the kind of pale complexion that suggested he spent most of his time indoors. The other was built like a linebacker and had the bearing of ex-military. Grant, meet Tommy Kowalski and Frank Martinez. Tommy's our computer guy. Frank handles security. I shook hands with both men, wondering what I was getting myself into. Mike filled us in, Tommy said. His voice was soft, almost whisper quiet. Someone's been playing games with your email account and your business records. We can fix that. How? Better you don't know the details. Plausible deniability and all that. Frank spoke up. We also need to talk about physical security. If these people are willing to frame you for tax fraud, they might escalate to other methods. You think they'd hurt me? I think desperate people do desperate things, and from what Mike tells me, they're about to get very desperate. We spent the next 2 hours going through everything I had on Victor and Dana's scheme. Tommy worked on his laptop, fingers flying over the keyboard, occasionally muttering things like amateur hour and sloppy encryption. "Got it," he said finally. "Your wife's been accessing your business email account for months. She's also been copying your files to an external drive. Want to guess where those files ended up? Victor's company." Bingo. But here's the interesting part. They've been sloppy about covering their tracks. I can trace every unauthorized access, every copied file, every forged email authorization. Is that enough to prove fraud? It's enough to prove they framed you. Question is, what do you want to do with that information? I looked around the room at these 3 men who barely knew me, but were willing to help me fight back against people who'd been planning my destruction for years. "I want to destroy them," I said. Mike smiled. "Now you're talking." "But legally," I added quickly, "I'm not going to jail for revenge." "Don't worry," Frank said. "What we're planning is completely legal. Morally questionable, maybe, but legal." "What are we planning?" Tommy turned his laptop screen toward me. "We're going to give Victor and Dana exactly what they deserve. Public humiliation, financial ruin, and criminal charges." "How?" "By beating them at their own game. They want to frame you for fraud. We're going to prove they're the real fraudsters. They want to destroy your reputation. We're going to destroy theirs first." Frank pulled out a thick folder. "I've been doing some research on Victor Brann. Guy's got a history of shady business practices going back 15 years. SEC violations, labor disputes, tax problems. He's good at covering his tracks, but he's not perfect." "What about Dana?" "Your wife's been busy. Turns out she's been using her position in HR to manipulate hiring decisions, steering contracts to Victor's company in exchange for kickbacks. It's all documented in emails she thought she'd deleted." Tommy nodded. "Nothing's ever really deleted, especially when you're dumb enough to use your work computer for personal business. So what's the plan?" Mike leaned forward. "Tomorrow morning you go to your IRS meeting. You bring Tommy's evidence proving you were framed. You also bring Frank's evidence proving Victor and Dana are the real criminals. And then? Then we watch their world burn," Frank said. I felt a surge of something I hadn't experienced in months. Hope. These people were giving me a chance to fight back, to prove my innocence and expose my enemies at the same time. "What do you want in return?" I asked. Mike shrugged. "Nothing. You're a good guy who got screwed over by bad people. That's enough for us. Besides," Tommy added, "I hate cheaters, and I really hate people who abuse the tax system to hurt innocent folks." Frank nodded. "Plus, this is going to be fun." We spent another hour refining the plan. Tommy would provide technical support, Frank would handle security and surveillance, and Mike would coordinate everything. My job was to play the innocent victim, which wasn't hard, since that's exactly what I was. "One more thing," Frank said as we prepared to leave. "After tomorrow, your wife and her boyfriend are going to know you're fighting back. They might get desperate, try something stupid. You need to be careful." "What kind of stupid?" "Could be anything. False accusations, planted evidence, maybe even physical intimidation. We'll be watching, but you need to stay alert." I drove home through the empty Cleveland streets, my mind racing. In less than 12 hours, I'd either clear my name and destroy my enemies, or I'd be under arrest for tax fraud. There was no middle ground anymore. Dana's car was in the driveway when I got home. I could see lights on in our bedroom, our former bedroom, since I'd been sleeping in the guest room for weeks. I let myself in quietly and went to the kitchen for a glass of water. That's when I heard voices upstairs. Dana was on the phone again. "Should be arrested by tomorrow afternoon," she was saying. "Once the IRS has him, we can move forward with the divorce. He'll be so busy fighting criminal charges, he won't be able to contest anything." A pause, then laughter. I know, it's almost too easy. He never suspected a thing, even when we were practically doing it right in front of him." Another pause. "Victor, stop. We can celebrate tomorrow night after it's over. I want to see his face when they put him in handcuffs." I crept back to the guest room and closed the door. In 8 hours, Dana was going to get the surprise of her life. I set my alarm for 6 a.m. and tried to sleep. But every time I closed my eyes, I saw Victor's smug face and heard Dana's laughter. Tomorrow couldn't come fast enough. The Federal Building in downtown Cleveland looked like a fortress of gray stone and tinted glass. I walked through the metal detectors at 8:30 a.m., carrying a briefcase full of evidence that would either save my life or end it. Janet Walsh from the IRS was waiting for me in a conference room on the 7th floor. She was younger than I'd expected, maybe 40, with the kind of sharp suit and sharper eyes that suggested she didn't lose many cases. "Mr. Mercer, thank you for coming. Where's your accountant?" "He'll be here shortly. Traffic." "Fine. Let's start with these." She spread out a series of documents on the conference table. "These are invoices showing payments from your business account to Brann Strategic Solutions, nearly $15,000 over the past year. Can you explain these transactions?" "Yes, I can. I was defrauded." Her eyebrows rose. "Defrauded?" I opened my briefcase and pulled out Tommy's evidence packet. "Agent Walsh, I believe someone has been using my identity to commit tax fraud and embezzlement. I have extensive documentation proving that these payments were authorized without my knowledge or consent." I handed her the folder. She opened it and started reading, her expression growing more interested with each page. "These are email logs showing unauthorized access to your business accounts?" "Yes, along with IP address traces showing the access came from computers belonging to Brann Strategic Solutions and my wife's employer." "Your wife works for an HR company?" "She does, and she's been having an affair with Victor Brann, the owner of Brann Strategic Solutions." Walsh leaned back in her chair. "Mr. Mercer, these are serious allegations. They're also provable. Everything you need is in that folder." She spent the next 20 minutes reviewing the documents, occasionally asking questions or making notes. Finally, she looked up. "Mr. Mercer, if this evidence is authentic, it appears you're the victim here, not the perpetrator. The evidence is authentic, and there's more." I handed her Frank's folder. "Victor Brann has been running financial scams for years. My wife has been using her position in HR to steer contracts to his company. They've been planning to frame me for months while stealing from both our employers." Walsh's eyes widened as she read. "Jesus Christ, this is a conspiracy." "That's exactly what it is." My phone buzzed. Text from Mike. "Package delivered." I smiled. Right about now, Victor and Dana were getting some very interesting visitors. "Agent Walsh, I'd like to file a formal complaint against Victor Brann and my wife, Dana Mercer. I believe they've committed multiple federal crimes, including wire fraud, identity theft, and conspiracy to commit tax evasion." "Mr. Mercer, I need to verify this evidence, but if it checks out..." She shook her head. "They're looking at serious prison time." "How serious?" "Wire fraud alone carries a maximum sentence of 20 years. Add in the identity theft and conspiracy charges, and they could be looking at decades." My phone rang. Dana. "Excuse me," I told Walsh, then answered. "Hello, dear?" "Grant, where are you?" Dana's voice was tight with panic. "Downtown. Why?" "The FBI is at my office. They're asking questions about Victor, about our relationship, about..." Her voice broke. "Grant, what did you do?" "I told the truth. Something you should try sometime." "You bastard! You're going to destroy both of us." "No, Dana. You destroyed yourselves. I just provided the evidence." I hung up and turned back to Walsh. "That was my wife. I believe your colleagues are interviewing her right now." Walsh nodded. "Mr. Mercer, I owe you an apology. It appears we were given false information about your business practices." "By whom?" Anonymous tip. "But given what we've discovered today, I suspect we know who made that call." My accountant finally arrived, looking frazzled and confused. I filled him in quickly, while Walsh made phone calls to coordinate with the FBI agents who were simultaneously raiding Victor's office and Dana's workplace. "This is incredible," my accountant said. "Grant, they could have destroyed you." "They tried, but they underestimated me." Walsh hung up her phone. "Mr. Mercer, I have good news and bad news. The good news is that all charges against you are being dropped. The bad news is that your wife and Mr. Brann are both being arrested as we speak." "That's not bad news for me." "I suppose not. You'll need to testify when this goes to trial." "I'll be happy to." I left the federal building feeling like a new man. The October sun seemed brighter, the air cleaner, the future possible again. My phone was buzzing with calls and texts, reporters who'd somehow gotten wind of the story, friends and colleagues offering support, even a few clients wanting to know if I was available for new deals. But the call I was waiting for came at noon. Sophie. "Dad, oh my God, are you okay? Mom called me crying, saying she'd been arrested, saying you'd ruined her life." "I'm fine, kiddo. Better than fine." "What happened?" I gave her the short version. When I finished, there was silence on the line. "Dad?" "They deserved it," she said finally. "Both of them." "I think so too." "Are you going to be okay? Financially, I mean?" "Yeah. Turns out, when you prove someone's been stealing from you, you get your money back. Plus damages." "Good. Dad?" "Yeah? I'm proud of you. For fighting back." After I hung up, I drove to Big Mike's gym. He was waiting for me with Tommy and Frank, all of them grinning like kids on Christmas morning. "How'd it go?" Mike asked. "Better than expected. They're both under arrest." "Outstanding. What's next?" "Next, I start rebuilding my life, and I figure out how to thank the three of you." "No thanks necessary," Tommy said. "Watching those two get what they deserved was payment enough." Frank nodded. "Besides, we might need a good real estate broker someday. You owe us a friends and family discount." I laughed. "Deal." That evening, I sat in my kitchen now since Dana wouldn't be coming home, and poured myself a whiskey. The good stuff. This time, it really was a special occasion. My phone rang one last time. Victor Brann, calling from jail. "You snake," he said without preamble. "You think you've won?" "I know I have. This isn't over." "Yeah, it is. You're going to prison, Victor, for a long time. And when you get out, you'll be a convicted felon who can't get a job managing a McDonald's, let alone running a consulting company." "I'll destroy you. You already tried. How'd that work out for you?" I hung up and blocked his number. Then I did the same with Dana's. Tomorrow I'd start the process of rebuilding my business, my reputation, and my life. I'd probably sell the house, too many bad memories, and find something smaller. Maybe closer to the lake. But tonight,